Alright, everyone. It is 1 o'clock. Go and get us started. Good afternoon. Host, Swiftland's Office Manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Alt Tags and Why and How to Use Them, and today's presenter, Diana Silvera. Diana Silvera is a librarian and president of Novare Library Services, where she works with libraries to develop, implement, and utilize technology effectively. Previously, she was employed by the Tampa Bay Library Consortium and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. She has an MLIS from the UNC Greensboro and Library Technology Planning for today and tomorrow. Published by Roman and Littlefield in 2018. Please welcome Diana Silvera and enjoy her webinar this afternoon. Diana?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Alt Tags. I am so glad all of you could join me on this beautiful Thursday. I was telling Taylor I thought it was Friday this morning and was all happy for the weekend, but I'm really excited about this session. As we start, I just want to lay a couple sort of house rules down on the table here. So I am a very casual presenter. Please type your questions in that chat box the moment you have them. I encourage you to expand upon if you have something to add to a point that we're talking about on one of the slides, or if you're like, no, Diana, that is not correct. Please put that in the chat box as well. I think we all learn when we all are talking and we're collaboratively learning. So I really encourage you to type into that chat box today. So if we can, those of you who have not yet, just type hello in that box so I know that you know where it is, and we can go ahead and get started. Wonderful. So at the end of the presentation, I do have a hyperlink to the slides. That is yours. You can review the slides, never look at them again, download them, whatever you want to do with them after this session. And my contact information, of course, is at the end, so that if you want to follow up, if you are like me and 5 hours after the fact you think of your questions, you can email me and I'm happy to help you with those. So let's, with further ado, get started. We are going to focus on sort of what are the benefits, what are they, why do we use them, get into how do you create an effective alt tag, how do you actually add them into web-based images, and then what are some best practices for creating these alt tags and as we use them every day. So in its most basic form, this code on the screen that says image source, image dog, this is what an image tag, the code for an image looks like on a website. This is basic HTML. So the image is the image_dog. A lot of times though, especially if we're taking pictures with our phones or we're downloading them from other sources, they might be a bunch of gibberish. They might be a bunch of numbers. They might have a whole mess of irrelevant information in there. So the name of the file often is not that useful for people. It doesn't really tell anybody what's in there. I know all of the pictures I download off my phone start with DS and then they have a whole mess of gibberish afterwards. So what we do is add this, I'm going to use the little pointer here, this alt tag, this alt equals, and in parentheses we put in a little more information. And what that does is give computers and people who are using accessible devices information about what that image actually is, because otherwise an image is something that nothing can read. So this has a lot of implications, especially in our digital world today. So where do we use them? Most people think of alt tags as something that we put on our website images. And hopefully all of you are doing that and you're good at that, but it's actually beyond that. We have more than just our website that's digital. We're creating PDFs and Word documents and all sorts of digital content that we share in different ways. Google Drive documents, whether they're Sorry, I had a blank there. They're just sort of Word documents or they're Excel or they're presentations. All of that stuff needs to have these tags. So anything you are creating that is a digital document needs to have tags. And that's something I'm really working hard personally on. I've always been good about doing it on my websites, but and PDFs, because PDFs always a big thing, but really going back to my slides and trying to make sure all the images have meaningful alt tags in my slide presentations and things like that as well. Now, one thing to note, and we'll talk about this in best practices too, for example, in this image, this slide that we're looking at, there's sort of a bluish background with some lines in it. That is a decorative image. So you would not add alt text. That's sort of the prevailing theory now, because it just distracts from the reader's presentation. So you would say you would mark it as decorative, and then the screen readers will skip over it as they're reading it. So why do you want to use them? So there's really, we've kind of already touched on one, but there's two main reasons. The first is actually, we're going to talk a lot about accessibility today, so we're going to pause and talk about search engine optimization. This is, Anne says, how do you mark it as decorative if it's going to go that way? So, and we're going to actually look at some examples later, and I can show you easily in a little with those screenshots later on in the presentation, because it's usually a little check mark. Okay. So we're going to talk about accessibility second, but first we're going to talk about search engine optimization. So how many of you have heard of search engine optimization? Okay, great. So what this is it's how we tell Google decides what's important, right? If you type in a word in Google, if I type in the word library, how does it know what should be the first result? How does it know what's the 10,500th result? So search engine optimization is really working on making your website content friendly to Google and other search engines, but we primarily use Google, so that your content rises to the top of the search engine. So what it really gets down to is it looks at a couple things. It looks at keywords. So if you think about a term that you're searching, maybe we just got some stuff for some turtle rescue stuff, so I'm going to use them as an example. So I would maybe type in turtle rescue, tracking, the terms that I would use. We all know these as librarians. The more of those terms and related terms that I use on my website, the more Google's going to say, this site's about turtle rescue. This is really important, and push it to the top. You add meta descriptions to your web pages. That means you create like a summary of what that page means, and that helps the search engine go, okay, this is about turtle rescues in South Florida. You optimize your images, which means you make them web friendly. You don't put up the images that right from your phone, because nowadays, our modern phones, the images are giant. They are 10 to 11 gigabytes sometimes. They're really high quality, right? Which we love, because I can print off a picture that I took on my phone. But for a website, that can create a really slow experience, because that has to go through the bandwidth and it has to load on each person's computer. And we all have different bandwidth. We all have that can affect how it loads. So huge images can create a really slow experience for people on your page. Yep, exactly. Rob is saying highest quality content as well. So, you're trying to help the search engine say, hey, I got really good quality here. That's really the important thing that you're trying to do. You add internal links. You link to yourself. You add alt tags for images so that Google knows that what those images are. You practice good design, usability, and ADA practices overall in your whole site. And we'll get into a little bit of that later, but really just following what makes the site good. and then you have the keyword in the URL. So all of this is stuff that, besides, as Rob said, is creating high quality, creating in-depth quality. Google likes the long read versus 150 words. So if you are really worried about search engine optimization on your page, you spend a lot of time doing this. Oops. So why does this matter? Because this day and age, people have no patience, right? We have talked about this in other webinars. Even us, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, we're out of there, right? So most people will never go back past the first page of a search result. So it is really competitive and really important to get your web page on that first page of Google results. Sometimes it's not the hardest thing to do when you're the Palm Harbor Library. If I put in Palm Harbor Library, of course it's going to come to the top. But it starts to get a little less clear when I put in, maybe I don't know that that's what I'm looking for, and I start to put in other information. Maybe I just put in adult literacy Palm Harbor. Maybe my Palm Harbor Library will come up, maybe not, because there's a lot of other stuff going on there. So I know a lot of you are sitting here thinking, I'm a library. This is not relevant to me at all. People look for the library website, they go to the library website to get our information, but that is not necessarily true. First of all, you can help people find your content, which maybe, I'm a librarian, I talk library. I was watching a documentary this week and my husband said, oh my gosh, it doesn't leave you when I'm screaming about resources and which they should be looking at this directory and that during the session like it was a football game. But people don't necessarily know what we have, right? They want ebooks. They don't necessarily know that the library has ebooks. Or streaming video. We have amazing stuff at the library. And you have so much research at academic libraries and so many special collections. People might not know about it. So they're just putting words in Google and you need to push yourself out so you get there first. Second, people do not find content linearly. They don't go to the main site of the library's webpage, click on resources and learning, and then scroll down and click on the next thing and pull up our database. That is not what the modern student's doing. That's not what the busy user is doing. They walk, even though they know they're going to go to the library website, they might type in library, ebooks download, and then they want to go straight to that site. So by having the right SEO, you'll actually show up in their search results. Does that make sense to you? Okay, great. Because what happens, and let's bring this back to alt tags now, is that if you are not tagging your images, that's an opportunity lost. And secondly, you might show up in this is how you end up with weird image search results. Last week I was working on a project with my son for school, and he curses the day he has a mother as a librarian because we are not allowed to just go to Google and look for images like his friends. So we're looking through the open source images, and he puts in his term, and then there's just weird images that show up, right? They're not relevant to the search results. And why is that? And I said, well, that's because their alt tags are wrong. That person did not put in the proper, they either purposely or just randomly put in a term. So, especially this is true a lot of times when you're looking for people. I know, you search Diana Silvera, and you put it in, you get other stuff because people didn't tag the images of me properly, and that there's 8 million Diana Silveras. But this really can affect our search results as we look through things. I see some typing, so I'm kind of positive. Okay, so taking the time to make sure that all of your images are tagged properly will help your content be found. It'll help, especially if you have I can't speak today, photography collections and things like that at your library. Your collection itself, if you're highlighting books, if you're highlighting resources, if you really put those alt tags in there, you are going to help push that quality, those results a little bit higher. And this will also help even within your site search. So if I can't find something in your site, if I hit site search, right, and I look for something, if you don't have it tagged right, I'm not going to find it. So that is one of the main reasons to use alt tags. And it's funny when I talk to people who are not librarians that maybe they don't have as much care for ADA respect. I was doing a search on a business the other day, and I don't know how I got into it, but of course I started looking at their site, and for their alt tag they had alternative tag for ADA as the description, as their alt description for every image. And I was like, oh my gosh, you kind of did it wrong, but I guess, I don't know. I don't, it kind of makes me angry for your business, but it shows you don't really care and you know better. But anyway, so taking that time can really make a difference. The next thing, of course, is accessibility. What accessibility is, this is actually the technique, is that you have to allow people to understand content that is being, my words are just not in my mouth today, that you're trying to convey to your users. If you are putting information up and it's through an image, you need to be able to have everybody get that information, not just the people who can read it. And, you know, when I talk about accessibility, we're not just talking about, oh, there's some blind people that are going to use my site and need a reader, but also there's a lot of people that English is not their first language. They're going to run your site through a translator. If you do not have alt tags, their images, anything you have put in those images is lost to them. That information cannot be translated by Google Translate or any other source unless they hand typed it in, which they probably won't. So you need to be able to describe the visual characteristics of an image and convey the same meaning. That's what we're going to do in a nutshell, and that's really what we're going to focus on for the rest of today's session. So we're going to take a step back and talk about how you add them, and then we'll go back into best practices and how you make them good. So how do you add alt tags? So this depends on the content, and I know this is a little small, but in Microsoft, and one of the things about Microsoft has amazing is how much better it's gotten with accessibility. So you're going to go up here. I think it's under review, and then you're going to, you can look at all of it, but you're going to right click on the image. You put the image in there, you line it up. It does not like when you have text behind, you know, when you have the freestyle alignment behind the image. It wants it aligned. So you're going to align that image to the left, to the right, to the middle, however you want to do it. And then you're going to click down here to edit alt text. And then you're going to come over and the little box will pop up and you're going to type in the information there. And what you want to do is kind of follow a light sentence structure. It doesn't have to be a formal sentence. It could be kind of a little broken sentence, but you want it to be a full sentence. You want it to describe what is happening in that picture. I might even put a crying or meowing Siberian kitten in there to kind of really convey that it's making that cute, adorable face. Does anybody have any questions about this? And one of the neat things with Microsoft, I will say, is once you have that alt text box open, you can keep it open and it will just kind of have multiple tabs over here on the side with other functions that you want to have going on. And you can just kind of bounce back to it as you're doing that. And somebody asked me earlier, right here is that mark as decorative. Dean, yes, if you are posting a Word document online, you need to do this before you post it online. I don't honestly know that I would trust the generated description for me. I would be very skeptical about that, but this is a really great tool. If you're bringing images from the outside in, sometimes stock photo places will have an alt text description already in there, but you want to look, Alicia, we're going to talk about that in a second because it sort of does, it can be problematic. They mostly carry over, I'll put it that way. Alicia is asking me, if you convert a Word document to a PDF and post it, will the alt tags still apply? And I would say most of the time. So yeah, if you insert an image from a stock photo or from another website, if you go to, insert image, open source images, you are going to get some with alt text, but you really need to look it over because a lot of times it's like the photographer's name, the website's name, all of that. Raquen's saying, so the alt tag help people understand what is going on in the picture, and will that work with PDF? Yeah, we're actually going to go to PDF in a second. If you are using Microsoft Word and then converting to PDF, I would do it in Word. It's easier to do stuff in Word than PDF when you're looking at accessibility, but you're going to have to check them to make sure they came over correctly. Does that make sense to everybody? And we'll look at PDF in like 30 seconds. I think it's the next screen. Nope, it's not, but we will cover it. Somehow, maybe not. So, yeah, you know what? And I found that the alt tags for online photos, it really depends. Some people are amazing at putting them in there, and some people are awful. So you really have to, Dean, look at it over. Now, when you are posting on Facebook, it is a little bit more of a challenge, but you still have those alt tags to add. Again, if it's not converting, I can't read that. If I am speaking a different language and I'm looking at your feed, this means nothing to me. I just keep going right past it. I see the Friends logo and I see Winn-Dixie. This just happened to be something I was working on in Facebook this week. It doesn't mean anything to me. So what you have to actually do is upload the image and then edit the image. And I will say this, and Facebook is my friend and enemy, right? Like everybody. It works in Creative Studio. It works in the newsfeed. I cannot find this functionality in their brand new business suite that they're rolling out. So if you are a Facebook heavy poster and it's really pushing you into that business suite, I would hold off because of this. I have actually sent feedback to them, and I know several others have too, saying this is missing. You forgot this functionality in there. So when you edit text, you can add in the alternative when you edit the image. This will let you, it's right here. Oops. It's right over here. So you add the image, and then over here it's going to have a little pencil and say edit image, and then you can add the alternative text. Does that make sense to everybody? And I actually forgot the PDF screenshot. So we'll go on and then we'll talk about PDF in a second. So Google Drive, the same thing. And often we try and, I know I've kind of tried to skirt working on a PDFs and people don't always have Microsoft Word, so you don't really want to use Microsoft Word. So I put some documents into Google Drive to share them because I think, oh, well, Google's really good with screen readers and stuff. And you would have to actually right-click on it to look. Ian's asking how you can tell if an image already has an alt tag. So you would actually have to look into this or look at the code of the HTML to see if it's there. So Google Drive, same, it's very similar to Word in that you're going to right click on the actual image, and then you're going to go down to the bottom here and hit alt text. And then you come in here and you put the title of the image, so you can rename that, and then your full alt text description. So it works a little bit different, but it's the same thing. Selena, what I would say is go into your options in your Microsoft ribbon to see if you have to add in some accessibility options. It should be there. It's probably just not turned on. I know under review and my Microsoft ribbon is where my accessibility stuff lives, if that helps you. Anna's sharing a link on how to check if an image has an alt text. And I'll add that to the slides at the end so that everybody has that. You have some browser extensions, that's probably true. And if you are using WordPress, this is what it looks like. You add the alternative text up here, and then you can have a description. The description is not the same thing as the description in Google Doc. The description actually just comes up for SEO and is not part of the screen reader experience. So you don't really need to, it doesn't have to be, the alt text is really where you want that. And if it is descriptive, like if it's decorative, again, like if it's just a background image, it's just nothing important, you would actually just have this alternative text blank. So, and then any website, this is what you would do. You would have the image, name, and then you would type in the alt text there. Now, I don't have a screenshot of Adobe, but I did want to tell you, if you are posting PDFs on your website, you really need to invest in the Adobe full PDF because software, because the free stuff does not do the accessibility stuff the same way the paid one does. The paid one will take your PDF document and if you don't have it, I would look at TechSoup. They often have some really good deals on PDF on Adobe products. It will actually walk you through your entire document and take you through each thing, and it will analyze the images and tell you if the alt text is there. And it will also take you through all of this stuff that is, you know, headers and tags and footers and all of that, and make sure it all works. One of the things that I have noticed doing this a lot is that it does not translate header tags, you know, H1, H2, H3, or title, header 1, you know, that you use in Microsoft Word very well. Often everything gets translated, it just kind of picks stuff and it decides on its own, I think, sometimes, and I have to kind of go in there and say, no, this is a header tag, this is a paragraph, this is an H2, and put stuff back into logical order. And it helps if it's all lined up and tagged properly in Microsoft Word, but it does not 100% translate. So if you are just using Word, PDFing it, and posting it to your website, there is probably going to be accessibility issues with it. How many of you have the full-blown PDF maker? Okay, wonderful. That makes my heart happy. So you have to actually turn it on, but you know, Adobe, bless it, I have found that what you're going to want to do is add the action wizard to your PDF. And one of the actions that you can have it do is make a document accessible and run through that check very slowly. They do have a help guide when stuff doesn't make sense. I'll say half the time the help guide actually helps me, but from that, I usually end up Googling to figure out what is going on that it doesn't like something. But it will help you make your fields fillable properly. It will make it readable. You have to have every word on that document readable, and it will help you check the reading order to make sure that the document reads naturally. You think, of course it will, but I have seen documents where it decides that the paragraph on the bottom is. Is anyone else having audio issues with me? Okay. You might want to restart your computer real quick or relaunch Adobe and see if that fixes it. I know I'm saying it and he can't hear me. I'm going to type, hold on one second, I'm just going to type really quick. Okay. So you will go through here and fix the tags, mark things decorative. It will sometimes take like the background that was not a decorative, it wasn't an image, and make it an image. So you'll want to go ahead and mark that as decorative in your Adobe. Does that make sense for Adobe? I apologize for not having a really good screenshot of it. If anyone wants to stay on the line at the end, we can try screen sharing. I think that's possible in here and look at it. Any questions? Any other software you're curious about? So really take the time to do that alt text. It's really important. We're going to talk about some best practices now to kind of go through this. The first is no more than 125 characters. This is not a paragraph. This is just a brief description of whatever the image is. For example, pancakes, this image here, it's really small, but it's pancakes, which I have been in the mood for all day, which is, I think, because I have this image in this slide and I've been looking at it a lot. So the word pancakes, okay, it's all right. It's not going to, it's not an A+ alt tag, but it gets the point across, right? But a stack of blueberry pancakes with powdered sugar, that's much better. I now can close my eyes and visualize the same thing that you're talking about. And that's really what you want. You want me to be able to understand what you're kind of talking about. You do not want to use this as a place to try and stuff SEO terms. Like where you start putting pancakes, fluffy pancakes, hotcakes, Perkins, all these kind of things that might kind of be related without being a sentence structure. That's actually going to hurt you with Google and kind of put you on the negative side of SEO instead of actually helping you. You want to stick to relevant terms that will help me describe this. Like, I don't need to say a stack of blueberry pancakes with powdered sugar on a white plate with a black background. I don't need to get into that because it's a little irrelevant. I also don't need to say, and this was actually really hard for me, which is why I'm saying it, say image of a stack of pancakes. Yes, it's an image. I don't need to say that. Everyone knows it's a picture. Everyone knows it's an image. You don't have to put those words in there first. Yep, the screen readers themselves will say image, so you don't have to actually say it. They know because they see the image tag, which is that first part right there. It says this is an image, and then it's going to read the alt text. I see multiple attendees typing, so I'm just pausing for a second to everybody get stuff in there. Yeah, it would be. Yes, Shannon, yeah, I know. And it was like something that I did in the beginning, and then I read something and I went, oh, yeah, you're not supposed to say that. But to me, that was trying to be extra helpful, and I was actually probably making people really annoyed with my technique. Yep. Also, someone told me you do not need to cover the intimate details, only what you should know. Exactly. So for this one, again, it's just pancakes with blueberries. That's what everybody needs to know, and maybe some powdered sugar. Maybe you want to mention the syrup. But the fact that there's a coffee mug in the background, that it's a white plate, that it looks like it's on a table, that's all stuff that nobody needs to know. Shannon says she has a bunch of LibGuides to go update. Yeah, I know. It is really hard. It is so hard to focus on what's important in the image and really make it stand out. So the next thing is, and I am a Canva lover. I will openly say that I love creating flyers in Canva. I love doing these graphic little ads, but we should not be conveying information this way. This is a program ad that we should be printing out. This is not the program ad we put on our website. First, there's several issues with this one. This was sort of the default in Canva for an upcoming, when I looked at flyers, but none of this information is readable. So I either have to, this is too much information for the alt tag space. There's over 125 characters. So right now, all of that is lost. I'm going to have to focus, maybe my alt tag would say something like Fall Festival, October 25th, 3 p.m. But yeah, it's, like I said, there's a lot of issues with this one that go beyond alt tags. The colors are all not ADA compliant either. You can't, the contrast is really bad. But focusing on the alt tag, yeah, it's pretty, right? And that's what we do. We go, oh, this is pretty. I work with a lot of people, and this is what we do. They create flyers, and they say, can you post this on the website? And I have to go back. No, this is not what we're going to post on the website. Let's post a picture of fall leaves and then this content next to it as words in the description of the event, in the event description. We do not need to post the flyer itself. Does that make sense to everybody? Especially in your calendaring software, in your blogs, we have this tendency to want to do that. You could do both, but you really, and I have done both, I would really, though, take the time to type every single word into the description. So nothing is being left out for somebody who's using a screen reader. But then it becomes kind of redundant to the people who are looking. They're like, why does it say the same thing twice? So kind of think through how you want that to look for your users. And it depends on your software and how things display. Maybe it doesn't seem so jarring for it to have both things together. Just take that moment to really think it through. Because, and again, if you are going to do this, right, this was an example on Facebook of a contest that, and this is all one image. This is somebody designed this in Canva. First of all, it has a lot of issues, right? Like you can't click on the link. But what they did in Facebook is type the whole thing up here as the description. And if you are doing this in Facebook where you're printing these graphic ads, I would do this. I would have it as an alt tag, something as an alt tag, and then write the rest as my description. Because of two things we've already talked about. First off, if somebody doesn't speak English as a first language, they are not going to be able to read they wouldn't read a book contest anyway, but they would not know anything is going on here. They would not know about your new program that you're really excited about. Secondly, if they have any kind of sight issues, not just, oh my gosh, they're blind, but some people are colorblind, some people have low vision. I was just talking to a lady this morning that has a lot of trouble with contrast, and we were working on trying to find a browser that does black and white for her so that she could see a little better. So all of that stuff compounds itself, especially on social media, which is such a visual medium. So make sure you put all of those, every word, right in the text. Any questions about that? So a couple other tips. So some of you said, like, how do I know if I'm accessible? How do I know where this is going? How do I know that I didn't miss a tag? Because I know that, like, I have the best intentions, but I start working on a site, there's a lot of different aspects, I'm updating content. I want to make sure I didn't skip anything when I finish. So I always go to this site afterwards. This is called webaim.org. There's also a browser extension for it. I like the website better, but both are effective. And it will take you through here, and it will show you these green right here. These are the alt tags. So it's showing me what that image is. So I can quickly and visually look over my website and see if I missed something. So really important to do, and you can see even the background image is tagged here so that they know what is going on. So just take a few moments. This will do a lot more than just tell you if your alt tags are correct. It will tell you that they're too long. It will tell you, things like that about them. We'll give you some tips, but it will also tell you if your header tags are correct, if your font contrast is good, if the font is too small, if it's not contrasting enough with the background. It will walk you through all of that kind of stuff and show you the errors so that you can research it and fix those one by one. And so I think I'm pretty good. I do a whole site, I'll come over here and I'll go, oh, I missed that, and I have to go back and fix it. So I really recommend, and it's free of charge. It's, it's a nonprofit. It's a government website, I think. It's really just super. So I can't stress it enough to you. Microsoft Word has its own accessibility checker. So under Tools, you go to Accessibility, check Accessibility, and it will run an accessibility check on your image. So I took my same image and made some changes that made it not so good here, so I could see errors. And it will tell me it's missing alternative text. The images are not in line, which means it wants you to come up here to the image editor and align it and fix it. It's not, the text was not contrasted enough. It's going to walk me through each step, and I can see as I fix it, they'll go off there. Yep, Stephanie's saying all Office products do this, even Outlook, and it's so great. This is such a great enhancement to me. I think, we forget to do accessibility in Microsoft, and we're sending stuff all over the place. Just taking a few minutes here. And the thing is, I can't stress this enough, good accessibility is good documents, right? You do this, you contrast stuff, you go through it, fix all the errors. Your document is going to look more professional. It's going to be more user-friendly. It's going to be received better by whoever's reading it. So you're creating a better package. It's not just about accessibility. It's about accessibility for all. And I can't stress that as something that's not key. Oh, I do have Adobe. Okay, thank goodness. High quality content, exactly. It all goes back to that, right? That's what we're looking for in this world. You know as much as I do, when you open a Word document and things are just awful, like fonts are giant, fonts are small, pictures are not aligned right, you go, oh my gosh. And that person's mastery, that person's credibility is questioned right off the bat before you even read the content, because you're so distracted by this stuff. So having this really not nailed down will create just a better credibility for you right from the moment they open your document. So this is Adobe. This is that checker. This is in the Pro version. This is not in the free version, the Reader. This is in the Pro version. You're going to click on Run Wizard, and then you're going to do Make Accessible, which is the first thing. And it's going to go through here, and it's going to you're going to add descriptions for your document. It's going to recognize the text using OCR, so everything is readable. It's going to look for your form fields. It's going to check your images for alt tags. And you're going to set the order properly, and you're just going to walk through it. If everything is simple and easy, this does not take a lot of time. If something is not right, you could spend the whole day working on this. I will not lie to you. To get things fixed. So the best thing to do is start with a good document that has good structure in Word and bring it over into Adobe. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. So I just wanted to do this as a little class experiment here. We have an image. Yes, Stephanie, it is awful when you only have the PDF to work with. I have like almost been in tears from that sometimes. There has been, I will be honest, I was actually doing something for my friends group and someone only had a PDF version and it was awful. I actually ended up printing it out, typing it into Word one by one, and then bringing it back into Adobe, which solved 90% of my problem. Even though I had to retype a document, it saved me hours of arguing with the formatting. So go ahead and write your alt tag for this image. I'm going to give everybody just like a minute or two to kind of think and type. What do you mean you don't see an owl? Hold on, what's going on? Brittany, you see the next slide. I don't even know how that's happening. So that's great. I don't know that that's like proper, but that's great. So I think that all of you are kind of seeing this, right? You're describing, except for Brittany. I don't know what's going on, Brittany. I'm really sorry. That's just strange. Um, you know, that it's an owl, that it's brown. Um, if you know it's a spotted owl, that's probably even more useful. That it's leaning its head to the side. Because what you want to be able to do is really just close my eyes and you tell me what you're seeing, and I have a reasonable facsimile of what you're describing to me. You know, that game we all played as a kid. So that's exact. I think we're pretty much on point, and I think all of you had really good descriptions there, and nice and to the point, right? You don't want to get too long-winded about it. So one more. Here's Brittany's cup of coffee. Brittany, do you see it now, the cup of coffee? That just cracks me up. I don't know what happened there. This one's a little more challenging because there is more going on in this image. So Anne is saying a hand holding a mug of coffee. White cup of coffee with a hand on the handle and a plant nearby. Hand holding white mug of coffee with a book in the background. Hand holding a mug of coffee resting on a table. Yeah, definitely, Natalia, a good start in the morning. I actually picked this image. I was going to use it for a page promoting just like reading for a social media something for libraries. So that also puts it in context that you would maybe want to, I was looking for an ebook and I couldn't find a good ebook. But definitely focusing on that it's a coffee mug, a person's hand is in it. Really describing that it's a home environment, that there's a plant, there's a book, there's a blanket, getting all of those facts in there because it really creates the image. If you just say a hand holding a coffee mug, it could be in a diner, it could be outside, it could just be a stock photo and it's all black in the background. So you want to kind of put it in the context that it's at someone's house. There's a table and a plant going on in there. Yep. And I wouldn't get too caught up maybe in the colors of stuff because that it's a white coffee mug or a brown desk, you start to get too caught up in the details. I would really just focus on the coffee mug is on the table with a book and a blanket in the background. But I think most of you are right on target with this, and it just writing good alt descriptions is important, and it takes time. And and if you were using this to promote maybe your book club book this month, maybe you name the book in the description. Maybe you do something like that. So maybe I want to put a lady drinking a cup of coffee on a table with a book and her blanket in Palm Harbor. So kind of pull it into a local search and bring in some keywords without getting too spammy. I'm not going to put in a bunch of stuff, but kind of trying to bring in the sort of idea of the rest of it as well. So I did want to take a long time for questions because I know we went over a lot. A couple things I really want to recommend to you. The biggest thing is if you have never, I cannot stress enough, try a screen reader. Just Chrome Vox is free. It's an add-on for Chrome, your Chrome browser. Firefox has one as well. Or you can download something like the non-visual desktop access or Orca. Those are both free. Yep, NDVA. I have Mac. It won't download on my Mac, so I have to use a web-based one. But NDVA, if you have Windows, is the way to go. These, try it out. Try and navigate just for a little bit with it, just even 5 minutes, just your website, just something. It is the most, all of this stuff will make sense when you do that. It is so fast too, right? It is, and I know for me that, I've been working on accessibility and stuff, but really closing my eyes and just navigating the websites that I'm designing with a screen reader has taught me more than any webinar I took, any class that I've listened to. Yeah, NVDA is really the best to do. Chromebox is nice because it's a browser-based system, so you don't have to, if you can't really install stuff onto the computer, it's a good option. But definitely try some stuff out. Just give it a try and see how it works. Yeah, and it is devastating when you find your page is inaccessible, but you learn from that, right? If everything is always perfect that you do, it's really hard to learn. When you find things have an issue and you're stuck, like the screen reader can't get past a certain place, it gets into a loop, or the menu is overwhelming it, or it skips some content on your website. Then you figure out what's wrong with my website, and then you work backwards and you learn how to create more accessible content for everybody. And I guarantee it will also look better when you're finished, which is amazing, it just comes hand in hand. And then everybody will like it a little bit more. So I did want to give you a couple more resources to explore and play with afterwards. This is a 5-minute video. This guy does a really great job talking about how to create a good alt tag. Just some more sources. And then this last link is a bunch of stuff from, oh, good, you know Matt. Okay, awesome. And this is a bunch of different screen readers sort of from the American Federation of the Blind and what they recommend for you, so you can look through those. Take some time and play with it. That's the only way that you're going to learn how to do that. If you have questions afterwards, I'm going to stay on the line as long as you have questions, but I know some of you have to be on the desk at 2 o'clock and you have places to be. The bit.ly is the slides. That is my email address, and I look forward to hearing from you guys or seeing you at the next webinar. I really enjoy having all of you here. I think your discussion makes this so much better than just me talking into a mic by myself. So I'm going to let you guys type questions, but I thank you all for coming today.
While everyone is typing questions I have, thank you, Diana, for an informative webinar. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, we ask that you join us on November 5th for Diana Silvera's next webinar, Adult Literacy Online. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message board listserv. Thank you everyone for attending. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Diana.